everybody. Welcome back to the CCSN podcast. I'm Chris here with Chase. Chase, how you doing today?
Doing pretty damn good. How about yourself?
Doing pretty good. I've always been a Monday person, if I could say that openly. I'm more of a Tuesday hater
Overhated.
than a Monday hater. That's what I'm saying. Start of your week, you're getting into it. But, then Tuesday rolls along and you're kind of like, all right. So like Tuesday's kind of my day to hate and like be mad at the world. But Monday, it's a pretty good day. Just watch some
I can
good
get behind
football
that.
games. We have a good football. Well, we have a football game tonight. I wouldn't call it a good football game. And we have the Steelers versus the Colts tonight. Not really a great matchup, but we had some pretty good games yesterday. Tell me something that you liked from yesterday, some performance you liked, some performance you didn't like.
Well, the number one thing I liked was Mr. Mike White in the rain coming out. I know it's a shitty Chicago defense, but man, he was dicing them up. And this was an offense where we were talking about, hey, you just put a decent quarterback in there, they're going to look amazing. I think Mike White, he showed that he could be a little bit more than decent at times. And I really liked what I saw from that, and the opening up of the Jets offense, the extra targets for Elijah Moore, the extra targets for Garrett Wilson. They've got so many talented players that they weren't able to get the ball to before. If Mike White's able to literally just get them the ball, I'm so excited for this Jets team.
I mean, yeah, we've been saying it all year. Garrett Wilson, absolute wide receiver one from this draft class. And what happens when you take Zach Wilson off the field and you literally put Mike White in? Two touchdowns and 95 yards. As you said, Elijah Moore is getting more targets. He seems like he doesn't want off the team right now. There's just so many weapons to be used on this team, and they're finally being utilized. Yes, it was a one game, small sample size like last year. I don't know if it's going to be the Mike White game, going to turn into the Colt McCoy game like every single year, but we'll see what happens. But right now, I'm rolling with Mike White if I'm the Jets, and that's pretty clear.
Oh, absolutely. I don't think there's a time that you could even give Zach Wilson his job back this year. He was at a point 5-2 as a starter, and all the Jets fans were getting pretty excited for that. But this is such a talented roster. They're there like kind of right now. Like they're trying to compete right now. They're in the conversation to win the division. And I don't think that it's completely unimaginable to think that they can go out there and win a playoff game, considering their defense is fairly loaded right now. I thought they had some problems on the interior at the beginning of the season. Quinton Williams is having an absolute breakout season, and he's really showing up in that side of the field. And with a team that's just so talented and so young, it would not shock me if they were to go out there and win a playoff game, which to me tells me you don't go out there and try and put Zach Wilson back in just to see what you got with him. It's too important now to do that.
Exactly, especially from a guy who took no accountability for sucking 2 weeks ago. I mean, said he owed nothing to the defense, nothing was his fault, blah blah blah. That's not what you say as a leader, even a young leader. I mean, you compare him to a guy like Trevor Lawrence, who after every single game that he has a bad throw, a bad read, he calls himself out on the play, and that's what you want from your rookie quarterback, especially a guy who's supposed to be your leader. And Zach Wilson does not look like that guy right now. I mean, with the Jets right now, they have two big tests. I mean, their next weeks they have the Vikings and the Bills in back-to-back weeks. That's huge test for Mike White in this offense, and we'll see what they really are. I mean, as you said, they were playing a pretty shaky, young Chicago defense, and if they can go out there and beat Minnesota or even beat the Bills, go 1 for 2. I think I agree with you. I don't think it's crazy if they win one playoff game.
Yeah, what impressed me the most about Mike White was doing it in the conditions that he did it in. It was horrible weather in New Jersey the other day, and Mike White just went out there in the rain and diced them up. And like, it's Chicago, it's a shitty team, but you are also in a shitty situation where the odds are kind of stacked against you, and as in terms of playing a good game at the quarterback position. It's very difficult to do that in adverse weather games. And Mike White showed the ability to do that, not when everything's completely under control. And more to that point, when the pocket breaks down around Mike White, I see a little bit more pocket presence from him than I see from Zach Wilson. He does a much better job stepping up in the pocket and avoiding these big sacks and taking and making these huge turnovers, which is something that I think is you can take that to your next start and you can take that long term where I don't think this is lightning in a bottle because there are things that are translatable to the next games.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I really like the scheme that they've been using the whole year, and especially with who's their offensive coordinator right now? I forget his name. He's
Uh,
from the Shanahan
yes,
family.
he's a Shanahan brother. So
I
that's all that
mean, the
matters.
yeah, I mean his first
Mike,
year with there, Mike. Yeah, it looked a little shaky, but right now apparently all Jets players are loving this guy. They love the scheme that he's building there in New York, and it's pretty evident that it's working so far. So I gotta say, the Jets, the past couple of years, I mean, longest run without a playoff appearance. It's looking like they're gonna end that this year. It's the year of ending playoff droughts in
It
sports.
is,
It really is. I
definitely.
mean, we had Seattle, and now it looks like we're gonna have the Jets
Sacramento.
possibly.
Look
And
at Sacramento.
I really like Sacramento. They're my team this year, but I don't want to say that yet. They're my feel good team this year, but I don't want
That's
to say
fair.
that yet. I don't want to
That's
jinx it
fair.
yet. But yeah, I mean, light the beam in Sacramento. Now we got this Jets team with Johnny getting his ice cream every single week, almost it seems like now. So it's a good time to be a Jets fan. I got to say that. I got to say that.
Definitely. Absolutely. And all that credit goes to Joe Douglas. Their general manager has done an incredible job. It literally feels like he's playing Madden out there. To steal Jermaine Johnson in the 20 with the 26th pick is absolutely. There were people saying he was going top 10 before that. And that clip that I'm sure everybody's seen that's went viral about how he was saying this is a guy that can stop Josh Allen if he rolls out of the pocket, and then it spliced together with the clip of him stopping Josh Allen when he rolls out of the pocket. Joe Douglas is one of the greatest football minds in a general manager position. I love him, and I think he's just done an incredible job turning around one of the worst franchises in the league.
I absolutely agree with you. I mean, this guy drafted Sauce Gardner and Johnson from the same draft class. Like, can you ask for anything better than that?
I could hit on the Sauce Gardner pick, to be fair. Anybody in their right mind, like that dude was fucking sick in college, man. Like literally, his number one, like his biggest thing was he just didn't allow a touchdown. Nobody scored on this guy. You don't get shut down corners like that. And when you see them coming through at a program like Cincinnati, who is actually playing some fairly decent talent. I mean, we were seeing Sauce Gardner matched up with some really good wide receivers. He was still dominating. I love Sauce Gardner. I think he's going to be one of those guys for the next 10 years. Right now, there's no number one cornerback in the league. Jalen Ramsey is getting cooked on a week to week basis. AJ Terrell's had a down season. Jair Alexander's had a down season. This guy, Sauce Gardner, to me, feels like the next shutdown corner.
I mean, I absolutely agree with you. I was watching an interview with his former Cincinnati coach a couple days ago, and his first time he was put on the field as a freshman, he was this skinny, short guy, short cornerback, didn't have the name Sauce yet, and he comes on the field first play, pass deflection. They're like, all right. Second, pick six. So I mean, from a guy like that who's just brought it since the day he was put on the field, ever since he got drafted, he was saying, "I'm going to be the best cornerback in the league," and look what he's been doing. He's top three already, would you say? Is that a stretch in November?
Like I'm saying, it's fairly close. I don't know
I
that
don't think
anybody's put together the body of work this season that Sauce Gardner's done. I mean, look around the league at the competition. Pat Surtain was literally getting diced up by DJ Moore the other day. And it's just all the top corners. Travis Kelsey made Jalen Ramsey, he embarrassed him last night. So there's just all those top guys. There's not a Darrell Revis. There's not a Deion Sanders right now. I think it's not crazy to say that this guy who's coming in and locking down all the best wide receivers on a week to week basis as a rookie is a top three cornerback in the league.
I definitely agree. I'll say this. I wouldn't honestly, I couldn't name a cornerback right now who I'd want more than Sauce Gardner. And I know that's a
That's
little
not
bit of a
crazy.
push, but I really believe that. Moving forward a little bit to the other side of New York, Buffalo. What are your takes on this Von Miller injury and just the Bills in general? Because the way I'm looking at them, I mean, I said this in the beginning of the season. I said they were a great team, but a lot of people thought that they were Superman, basically. There was nothing stopping them. They were perfect. They're not. I mean, they almost lost to the Lions, and they should have lost to the Lions if Jared Goff could have connected at the end of that game. What are your thoughts on the Bills right now, especially with this Von Miller injury? I know I just said that, but he's just been officially ruled out against New England. They don't have the exact reasoning for this injury, but give me your takes.
I haven't kept too close eyes on it. I mean, when I saw it live, I immediately thought that's an ACL tear. He's done for the season. And I'm kind of working under that assumption right now because that's what it really looked like. And I don't think it's an injury that you come back that quickly from. His leg was bent completely sideways. That's huge because this team's number one issue on the defensive side of the ball the past few years has been getting juice off the edge. And when you're coming up against Patrick Mahomes and all the great quarterbacks in the playoffs, you've got to hurry them up. You've got to rush them and make it so that they don't have all the time in the world to just pick you apart. Because if you give Pat Mahomes a clean pocket, he's going to kill you. Von Miller was the guy they brought in on a huge contract long term to be that guy off the edge. Losing him right now in week 12, week 13 is not what you want to see at all. I do like what they're getting from guys like Basham, like Rousseau, and a couple of other guys on the edge, but it's not. They don't have a dominant edge rusher that can get there consistently within 3 seconds, basically. And that's what Von Miller has been his entire career. If you lose that guy, your defense is taking a hit no matter what. And for a team that's already prone to bad games offensively, the Bills are, it's that's scary to not have that defensive reliability to fall back on when your offense isn't running the ball as well, when your offense isn't putting up 500 points. So I think that's a huge injury.
Yeah, I mean, this is the same leg that he hurt a couple of years ago. He's
Mm-hmm.
obviously not getting any younger. He's on the wrong side of 30 right now. And I have to agree. I mean, yeah, they haven't officially ruled him out for the season yet or given it any timetable, but I think it's going to be huge. I mean, I really do think he's going to be out at least the rest of the regular season. Maybe they'll try to rush him back for the playoffs, but losing Von Miller on this defense, I mean, obviously, but it is a huge blow for this Buffalo Bills defense. And right now, I mean, I've been saying it. I think Patrick Mahomes is the better quarterback between Josh Allen and the two, and obviously, quarterback is a big say on the team in general. But I think the Chiefs are clearly the favorites in the AFC right now.
I 100% agree. Josh Allen, and we've been saying this for a while at this point, great quarterback. Really, at his best, is probably when he's playing at his best, he's the best quarterback in the league. But the difference between Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes is the consistency. Patrick Mahomes is the same guy game in and game out, and really play in and play out. You're not getting a play from Patrick Mahomes where it seems like a lapse in mental, like in his mental ability. With Josh Allen, there's the occasional play where you're like, what? Like what was that? That's rookie year Josh Allen that we're watching. Like the one that comes to mind instantly is the pick right to I forget who it was. It might have been Reed on the Jets, but he threw a pick right to somebody on the Jets on a an easy drag route to Dawson Knox. Knox floated up the field a little bit, but that should have been a completion easily, and he just threw it right to the defender. And we've seen that a couple times. He leads the league in picks this year. He's thrown 6 red zone interceptions this season. Those are not numbers that are you don't like that. Not to see from your all-time great quarterback that you just gave a huge extension to. When things are going well, I think that this team is unbeatable, and it's not completely unthinkable for that to happen for a 4-game stretch in the playoffs, and they just go all the way and win it. I don't think that's like completely unimaginable. It almost happened last season, but they leave themselves open to too many mistakes too often, and I think that that game plan is not something that's consistent and something that you can rely on long term.
Yeah, I mean, Josh Allen throws one of those dumb interceptions in a playoff game. There goes
You're
the
out.
season. And I could really see that happening. I mean, as you said, he's prone to those dumb mistakes where you look at him and you go, is this the guy who's supposed to be rivaling Patrick Mahomes right now, Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers? And I don't know. I just don't know if I can, how much I can trust that going into the playoffs. I
Yeah,
really don't.
like I said, it's kind of like a coin flip with the Bills. Like you're either getting the best team you ever watched on paper, or you're getting a team that is very, very underwhelming. And once these injuries start piling up, you start opening up the door to more and like a higher possibility of being underwhelming. And I don't think it's all gone for the Bills. I think they've still got a year. This is still a positive season. Josh Allen's on track to lead or to break the all-time yards record for a player. Like this is not a bad season for the Bills, but they're starting to show their flaws a little bit. I mean, me especially, I was looking at Josh Allen playing with a torn UCL and going out there with his hurt arm and trying to punch the ball out after throwing one of those bad picks. And I see a world where this does not last 10, 15 years like Manning, like Brady, like all these other guys do. And like everybody's kind of writing this into be. Like everyone's saying, all right, Josh Allen's the next best quarterback for 15 years. What happens if that UCL injury gets a little bit worse? Because he's still playing on it and he's still going out there and playing 100%, putting it in harm's way. That's the kind of stuff that scares me with the Bills. It's nothing about the talent. I love all, like, literally, they have probably the most loaded roster I've seen in my time watching sports. Every single position group has like a future Hall of Famer in it. And yet I'm still worried about them because they just don't it feels like they don't understand the NFL the way that the Chiefs do. They're just a lot more careful.
Yeah, I do agree with you on that. I mean, I just feel like the Chiefs, they know, I mean, this sounds a little cheesy, I guess you could say, but it just seems like they know how to win more. They know how to do it better. They know how to just, I don't know. I just really believe in the Chiefs a lot more than the Bills, like a lot more. And coming in this season, I would probably have gotten a lot of weird looks or something, but I don't know. I don't trust Buffalo. I mean, this Detroit team gave them a hell of a run on Thanksgiving, and from the team who's supposed to be the top dogs without a doubt, that's not what you want. It's really just not what you want.
Andy Reid's got his issues, but the difference between what separates Andy Reid from the rest of the coaches, which I don't think Sean McDermott's one of those top 5 coaches. So what separates Andy Reid and being in that upper echelon of the best coaches in the league from Sean McDermott is the experience and the being around the league. Andy Reid knows what it takes to be in the league for 15 years. Why? Because he's been in the league for 15 years. Basically. He's actually been in the league for much longer than that. But it's that kind of stuff that translates in every facet of the game. Like Andy Reid has been in the league in 15 years as a coach, but he's also seen guys like Donovan McNabb, who lasted in the league for the longest time, and all these different guys. So he's able to pass that down to his younger players. Whereas Sean McDermott, he's been in the league for a decent amount of time, but he's a younger head coach and not a head coach that's really got the experience as a guy like a Belichick, as a Reid, or guys like that. So I feel like that's a big difference between the two teams.
Yeah, definitely. But I mean, hey, you got to make your mark at some point, and if there's any time to make it, it's this season or next season for McDermott and the Bills. And after that, I really think once his contract starts booking in, and Stephon Diggs gets a little older, and you're gonna have to start paying everybody else, it's just gonna be that loop again with the Bills. You got to win soon. I mean, I know there's always the it was a positive year, all that shit, but that's not really what you're looking for at the end of the day. I mean, I like the positive year stuff for teams who weren't supposed to be that good. Like
Yes.
for the Seahawks, I would call this absolutely positive year, great year. But I mean, if the Bills losing in the second round or even the AFC Championship, is it that successful of a year with the standards they had coming into this year?
It's so funny because I don't think it is, but with some teams, like the expectations are so different where you can have the exact same result and it will mean two totally different things. Like if the Jets were to win one playoff game this year and lose in the second round and get their ass blown out by like the Chiefs or anybody, it would be a lot different than if the Bills were to go and win one playoff game and then lose in the second round and get their ass blown out. It, it goes to that point where, yeah, it's not always a good year if you win 12 games and you get your ass kicked in the playoffs. There's different expectations for different teams. And when you've got a guy like Josh Allen and you've got a team built like this, you can't go in there saying, oh, well, we'll be all right with no matter what the outcome is. It has to be championship or bust with this team.
Exactly. I mean, when you just say that with the 12 wins, it's not a positive season. They're just starting to look like the Green Bay Packers, the new era of the Green Bay Packers. Win a lot of regular season games, have a lot of hype coming into the regular season, and then the playoffs hit. And maybe I'm writing them off a little too soon, but I don't know. But the Bills just give me a weird vibe, I guess you could say. I just don't think that they are have the championship in their DNA, especially this year. My take with the Bills is that I think they're going to lose in the AFC Championship. I just said that, but I'm going to stick with that. I don't think they make it past the hump this year.
I think I agree. I don't think this Bills team has some flaws in it that I think are going to rear their head in the playoffs. I've been saying it all year. Josh Allen is the only running back on this team. You hear Lamar Jackson is a running back, and it's for reasons that we can't dive into on this podcast. But you should be hearing it more with Josh Allen because there's nobody on that team that can actually run the ball except for Josh Allen, which I feel like is just hilarious. It's going to
I
hurt him
mean,
long
yeah,
term.
you're talking about him playing through this injury and everything else, and he had 12 rushing attempts yet or on Thanksgiving to go along with that, and he's taken hard hit after hard hit after hard hit. And I mean, I know it's a different situation, but we see with Justin Fields, a guy who's been running the ball. I mean, that's really all he's been doing, but he already got hurt. And how long until Josh Allen gets that big hit and we see him out for a couple of games? So this is not what you want to do. But I think what it's going to take the Bills to stop doing that is that big injury, and that's just the way of the world with the
And this has been
with
my issue
football.
with Sean McDermott, though. Sean McDermott, once that, if and when that big injury comes, Sean McDermott's not going to be able to develop a running game. He's never been able to do it. He's had so many different running backs, so many different offensive line groups. Never in his career has he been able to develop an actual consistent running game. Not once. Not when he had LaShawn McCoy, not with young Devin Singletary, who, say what you want, I think Devin Singletary, especially when he just came into the league, had some juice. You got James Cook this year, nothing. You've literally got nothing from the guy. You trade for Naheem Hines, nothing. I do not like Sean McDermott's run game at all. It's very inconsistent. And the way that they compensate that is making Josh Allen run more times per game than prime Cam Newton. Cam Newton was averaging 7.5 rushing attempts per game. Josh Allen's up above 8 now after Thanksgiving, I should say, which is absolutely ridiculous. We saw what happened with Cam Newton. I love Cam Newton and Josh Allen are so similar. They are almost the exact same person. They are physical freaks, huge arm, runs the ball very well, takes hits, powers through, and never puts their foot on the brake. That is cool. It's great to watch, and it might lead you to 15-1 and the best offensive season from a quarterback that you've seen ever, but it will not win you a ring. It will, it just is not sustainable long term. And I'll sit there, I'll die on this hill. They're ruining Josh Allen's career by allowing him to play with Sean McDermott at this point.
I mean, especially when you look at the difference when you're comparing a guy like Josh Allen, that 2015 Cam Newton season. Who did Cam Newton have at his wide receiver positions? Ted Ginn Jr. was his wide receiver one. And then you have a guy like Josh Allen who has Gabe Davis, Stephon Diggs, Dawson Knox. He has weapons. He has guys. Keep him in the pocket. Let him throw the ball. And you just paid this guy. You want him to get hurt? Is that really what we're doing right now? So, especially in a league right now in the NFL, which is really shifting back towards the running back game, it kind of seems like the Bills are just going away from that, and that's not really what you want to do. But shifting forward from Buffalo, shifting forward from New York, I just want to say a little something about the Lions. I think they're almost there. They're almost there,
They're a quarterback
and
away.
they're quarterback away, and you have 2 first-round picks this year. You have some good pieces on both sides, young pieces. I just don't know if Dan Campbell is the guy for this team to really take him over the edge as a head coach. And I mean, like, I know I love the guy. He brings the great energy, but I just don't know how much I trust him as a head coach to win a Super Bowl in this league.
I don't know that I completely disagree, but why don't you trust him? Like what with Dan Campbell throws you off? Because I don't think that he called that bad of a game against the Bills.
I don't think he calls. I don't know. Not I wouldn't say. I'm not talking even about that one game. I just think after this year's draft, after you move on from Jared Goff and you kind of have this young core that you've been building around. I mean, I know everyone loves the culture that Dan Campbell's been building, but you know what? It kind of gives me the same. It kind of reminds me a little bit of the Brian Flores situation. Not like the internal stuff, but just like the way the players viewed him as. A lot of players loved this guy going into it, and when he was fired, it kind of took a little shake on the Miami Dolphins locker room and everything. But look what happened right now. I mean, they're looking pretty good with Mike McDaniel. I mean, they're second in the AFC. The whole coaching and culture shift, and I don't know. I feel like once you establish this young core a little more, you need a more offensive minded guy, especially if you're going to go out there and draft one of these top quarterbacks this year.
Yeah, I think that you're probably right. I don't think that he has the capability of drawing up a complex offense, but at the end of the day, I feel like Dan Campbell throughout his career so far has been nothing but impressive. And I eventually he'll probably lose a job. He's not the kind of guy that I trust to develop a quarterback, but he's done a great job with this Detroit team. I think they're going to give him another year, even if they go out and get the quarterback this offseason. He, like he got a lot of shit for the Bills game, but he was going he was if he had like the perfect team and a really good team around him, it might have been like the most masterclass coaching thing we've ever watched. He was trying to keyhole it perfectly. So he scored, or the Lions scored, and the Bills got no time left on the clock, and they had it. But Jared Goff just literally missed the wide open throw for the touchdown. And you can say what you want to say. Maybe he should have called the timeout. Maybe he should have managed the clock a little bit better, managed it a little bit differently, understood who he has instead of trying to play it perfectly. But I can't fault the guy for going through a perfect or executing perfectly as a head coach, and then his players not being able to execute on the field. That's not really on him, and I'm willing to give him another year. Is kind of my conclusion here.
Yeah, I won't fight you on that. I just feel like if I have a guy leading my team, I really want him to be like an absolute defensive minded god or an offensive minded god. And I mean, I love Dan Campbell. He's a big meathead, great energy, but I don't know. I just feel like this isn't the guy I'd really want leading my team to the Super Bowl.
I don't
And I
think
just don't
he's
think he
really a
can.
Super Bowl. Yeah, I don't think he's a Super Bowl head coach, but he does have his role in the league. I think he's going to be a head coach for a good minute, even if even after he gets fired from, I don't think it's this year, but even after he loses his job with the Lions in whatever capacity that it is, I think he'll get another job pretty soon after that with a rebuilding team.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. I mean, I just think Dan Campbell is such a good assistant coach. I feel like that's where he should be. And maybe I don't know. I just don't. I'm not a big Dan Campbell head coach kind of guy. I'm a Dan Campbell guy, just not a Dan Campbell head coach guy. Just doesn't give me the championship DNA. But DeAndre Swift, is he out of Detroit after this year? Because I really can
And
see it
better be.
happening.
This has
I
been one of
really
my
can see
best.
it happening.
Jamal Williams is always the better back in that backfield. DeAndre Swift's biggest issue is the fact that he does not run up. He doesn't run
Straight.
up the field straight. Basically, I can't north south. He doesn't do north south running. It's all east west. That's his issue. Like he's always trying to cut it around the outside. He's scared of contact because of the shoulder injury. And we've kind of seen this from DeAndre Swift so far. He's really frustrated that coaching staff to the point where they kind of last season were taking carries away from him and giving it to Jamal Williams, to the frustration of many fantasy owners. We're seeing that again this season. And say what you want, they drafted him high ish. I mean, it was close to a first round pick, and he's just not that guy. Honestly, he had a fairly good career at Georgia, but for the NFL, you really have to focus on getting everything you can out of maximizing every potential carry that you get. With DeAndre Swift, we see too many of those carries go for -3 yards, or instead of going for 4 yards, it's like he stopped at the line of scrimmage because he's trying to bounce it outside instead of just absorbing tacklers and going through the contact. Never see that from DeAndre Swift. So I absolutely think they're going to get rid of him. I think this coaching staff is completely fed up with DeAndre Swift, and they realize Jamal Williams is a much better back. And look, if you're trying to replace any position on a team, running back's the easiest one.
I mean, Jamal Williams over his last 3 games, 6 attempts, 6 yards, 5 attempts, 20 yards, 5 attempts, 19 yards. That's just not what you wanted from your lead running back as what he was supposed to be coming in this year. He's only 23 years old, so I really do think he'll find another team quite easily, at least in a backup role somewhere. But I think his time in Detroit is pretty much over. And Jamal Williams is a free agent after this year, but unless he goes and gets a pretty good bag somewhere else, which I really don't see happening because teams aren't paying running backs what they used to be. I feel like Le'Veon Bell was kind of like the prime example of stay away from free agent running backs. I mean, the class is pretty stacked this year. You got a guy like Tony Pollard out there who I think is going to be an interesting wild card, or I can really see on a team like Jacksonville. And you got a guy like Saquon who. Are you going to pay him if you're New York? Because I don't really think you should, but
I think
there's
they
just a lot
will.
of questions right now. I think they will too, and I think it would just be another New York mistake.
Yep.
I mean, you just don't do that. You don't pay running backs. As you said, it's the most replaceable position in football.
We're already seeing the decline of Saquon Barkley as we speak. The last few weeks, he's just kind of fallen completely off, and it's like the burst isn't even there anymore. Earlier in the season, like we were seeing the game against the Titans to start the season, 9.1 yards per carry. He's down to the last few weeks, 3.5 last week, 1.5 the week before. He had a good week against the Texans when he got 35 carries, but even then, he put up 150 yards on 4 yards per carry, 2.6 against the Seahawks. I really don't think that Saquon Barkley is as back as a lot of people like to say that he is. Like, I love Saquon. And it's a really fun story to see him putting up about 1,000 yards this season again, which is he'll finish with about 1,200. I'm not as sold on Saquon Barkley as I was when he was coming out of the draft. He's not as athletic anymore. He doesn't make people miss as much anymore. He's kind of just a product of an offensive line at this point. He's not DeAndre Swift, where he's running east west. He is a north south runner. He absorbs contact and he really does work hard, but he's not the explosive back that he was coming out of college. He's not like an Adrian Peterson type of guy. He's more like an average running back at this point.
Yeah, I mean, as you said, over his last couple of weeks, his numbers have really declined. He showed it. I mean, he doesn't have the burst anymore. 25-year-old running back, a bad organization who's been known to hand out contracts to offensive weapons. I could definitely see it though, but I I don't know, like, Todd Gurley, another guy, another prime example of why you do not pay running backs young, and I just think it's gonna be a reoccurring theme. Zeke Elliott, another like, just there's so many times where a running back gets paid, and then as soon as they get paid, you're like, "Shit, why did I pay him?" So, it's gonna be a little interesting, I feel like, because there are so many good running backs on the market this year. Let's see let's see what happens. I mean, we saw with the wide receiver market last year. Christian Kirk really set the table there. We have Josh Jacobs as a free agent this year. I mean, I want to
Yeah.
talk about him a little bit, and
Yep. I'm excited for Josh Jacobs' market.
there are just so many interesting storylines on the running back market this offseason.
Yeah, I feel like that's about time to segue to Josh Jacobs because if there was a star from yesterday, it was him. Josh Jacobs won. It was 303 total yards, 2 touchdowns, the game-winning touchdown in overtime. Look, Josh Jacobs, they declined his fifth-year option. He's looking like
6.9 per carry.
yeah, I who is this guy? They declined his option for a reason. Josh Jacobs did not have burst last season. Now we're
Now
coming
he's
into this
showing it.
season. It's not even like he just has burst. He's got a second gear that's like better than anybody else. Anybody on defense. You see him continually like routinely just bursting by people. It's like this is a guy, I don't know the exact numbers on him. He's over 200 pounds easily. This is a bowling ball of a running back with speed that is right now at the top of the league, kind of. And when you're watching him play, especially think about the 86-yard touchdown, he was moving, man. He got past that angle from the safety so quickly. I don't think the safety even expected him to be moving that fast because he took a bad angle to the ball. I mean, the dude is flying. And on top of that, he's running more physical than ever. He's able to catch passes out of the backfield. If there's a back that I'm willing to spend money on this offseason, it's Josh Jacobs. If there's somebody who genuinely looks like they're going out there and playing at the top of their game and can be somebody that I'm bringing in and or is a real game changer, it's Josh Jacobs. It's not Saquon Barkley. It's not Tony Pollard. It's not any of those other guys. I feel like Josh Jacobs is the number one name on the market right now.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. He's 24 years old. He'll be 25 going into next season. He
Young.
can do it in both parts of the game. And I mean, there was rumors in the beginning of this year of the Raiders cutting him, not even trading him, cutting him, especially after that Hall of Fame game, which I mean, I don't know how people even overreact to the Hall of Fame game, but you remember there were the
Yep.
overreactions of Josh Jacobs is done after this game. He no longer the lead back, and what are we seeing now? But let me give you this question: we're talking about paying running backs, we're paying Saquon Barkley, paying Tony Pollard, paying Josh Jacobs. What are you giving Josh Jacobs? He'll be 25 by the time of free agency. Have this workload on him. Like that's the tricky part about it because yeah, it seems perfect, but what will he take and what will you offer?
See, I think that the number, like when you're looking at a guy like this, you really got to see, do you trust him to stay healthy for you? Because Josh Jacobs is one of those talents that, yeah, if he's on the field, he's literally going to transform your offense every single time out there. He's averaging 5.5 yards per carry this season. He's a dominant running back. If you're able to look at his medicals, which I don't have access to, and you're able to see that there's nothing that's a red flag there, I think you're willing to give him about 20 a year, about 20. And I
Yeah,
mean,
makes sense.
I think that I'm not going to go with a longer term deal if you're going like that, but I personally would be willing to give Josh Jacobs around like 3 years, 60 million to come play running back. And I think who else is going to offer more than that for a running back? I don't see that happening, especially for a guy who his career up until this season has been fairly disappointing. And I do think that there is another gear for Josh Jacobs to kick it into, which is why I feel a little bit better paying him than I do about paying Saquon Barkley.
Do you think the Raiders pay him, or do you think he goes somewhere else?
I do not think the Raiders pay him. I don't think he
Yeah,
wants to be with the Raiders. They
I
declined
agree.
his fifth year.
I feel like he's kind of just showing out right now. Like, you wanted to decline my fifth year, I'll show you what I'm doing. And I mean, hey, this is a guy who teammates love him. I mean, after his walk-off touchdown yesterday, I saw a video and he was just saying thank you to his offensive line for holding the down, making a gap. And man, that's what you want. And I mean, Raiders fans are probably going to be pissed off when this guy leaves this offseason and goes wherever he goes, and it'll be pretty cool. But as we said, bite the bullet, and then you can go draft another guy because running back is very, very replaceable in this league. I know that's easier said than done when you're probably replacing the best running back in the league from this year, but it has to happen. I mean, especially with the contracts that Las Vegas has been handing out over the past couple of years, it seems like they just have rapid fire money. And are you really ready to put $20 million a year into a running back when you have a lot of holes to fix out there in Las Vegas?
Look at the Panthers. The Panthers got rid of Christian McCaffrey and the running game got better. Like it's not
Exactly.
running back is not a position that's irreplaceable, but I do think that adding a top tier guy, like a real superstar running back to a top offense is a lot more valuable than having a top like a superstar running back on a decent offense like the Raiders have. Which like Josh Jacobs' value is entirely dependent on where he goes and where he signs. Like if he signs with on a team with a bad O line that gets behind in the game and has to throw the ball, he's not going to put up good numbers, and his career is not going to look the same as it would if he were to go to the Bills without
I
Sean
love
McDermott.
I love him on Detroit. If I'm
Yeah,
being honest,
honestly, that's a good.
I
I did
love
not even
it.
think about that. That is a beautiful fit. They have one of the best running games in football. Their offensive line is entirely like it's a very tenacious offensive line, and I just love it. And with Dan Campbell, they're going to be smash mouth football all the time. Yeah, I like that a lot. Josh Jacobs to Detroit on a decent contract. Get your quarterback. Get him a run game to help him grow. I think that could really make some noise
I mean,
in
hey,
the
you'll
NFC.
have St. Brown, Josh Jacobs, decent O line. I mean, you have DJ Chark and some decent supporting member. You lost TJ Hawkinson now, but you have money to
Sure.
spend. You're not going to be paying a quarterback for that much longer with this Jared Goff contract coming up after this year. Go out there and do it, Detroit. Give your fans something to smile about. It's time. I mean, they deserve it. Um, but yeah, I mean, I'm really excited for Detroit's future. I mean, I know a lot of people probably haven't been able to say that for a couple of years now, but hey, future looks bright up there in Michigan, and I think they have a bright future ahead of them. But moving to another part of the running back community, Zeke and Tony Pollard. I mean, Zeke finally had a pretty decent game on Thanksgiving. He had like 95 yards and a touchdown, over 5 yards per carry, which is new for Zeke, especially this season. I
Very
mean,
new.
this is a guy who usually averages 2 to 3 yards per carry, and that's just what it is. And if Zeke can stay healthy and they can really learn how to use this running back deal, I think it could be pretty dangerous come playoff time. But I just don't know how much I trust the Cowboys to really balance it out that much.
Yeah, I think this game showed a lot of holes with the Giants more than it did anything else with their defense. I don't think that Zeke to me didn't look any more explosive than he did the last few weeks. He didn't look any better. He didn't look like he had some extra juice and extra gear. It just looked like some poor defense with their offensive line was creating a lot of holes for him to run through, which any running back can run through holes at this point, unless you're DeAndre Swift. But yeah, Zeke he had a cool game. I think Tony Pollard is by far the better back in that backfield, and having they're gonna have to lose Tony Pollard because you can't pay two running backs. I think that that's going to be a detriment long term. Any game that we see Zeke come out here and play decent really kind of hurts the Cowboys long term because it just gives them false hope in a guy who really is no more athletic than he was 5 weeks ago when he was performing bad against the good teams. So, yeah, cool game. I like Tony Pollard, but the Cowboys and their run game is not something that scares me long term, especially if they're going to continue to feed Zeke carries.
I mean, yeah, this is a guy they do have the option to have a buyout after this year, but you're still going to owe him some money and keep him on the books. You have 3 more years of Zeke in this contract. I feel like it's been lingering for years now. It's a weird situation for Dallas. I mean, obviously, they definitely have thought to themselves, "Shit, I wish we didn't pay him, and we could just go out there and pay Tony Pollard and make it pretty easy." But that's not where they're standing. I think Tony Pollard's going to get a pretty decency sized bag this offseason. I mean, how old is he? 25 years old now?
Something
24
like
years
that.
old?
No older than that. I'll tell you that. I mean, he's
Yeah.
pretty
So
young.
I mean, I didn't know Zeke was only 27 years old. I mean,
Only
his battery died so quickly. It is crazy. He had his 2 good years and then he wiped out. I mean, that's why I am just so. If I was an NFL GM, it would be so hard for me to pay a running back, even a guy like Josh Jacobs right now. Because I mean, hey, you looked at Zeke a couple of years ago when they gave him this contract. You were like best running back in the league. Obviously, he got that contract, completely changed the Cowboys' offense, and then boom, that happened. And that's the thing with the NFL and just sports in general. Once the guy gets paid, you don't really know exactly what you're going to be getting, especially in the contract year. So that's just a
especially at
little,
running back.
yeah. And so it's like the lottery paying a running back. But what's worse, paying a running back top tier money or drafting a running back round one?
Well, I mean, or you could do what the Cowboys did and do both. Draft one of the top 10 and pay them top tier money. Like, I mean,
That is true.
there's nothing worse than that. There's literally nothing worse than that. I don't care if Zeke gave them 2 good years. When's the last time the league's leading rusher has won a ring? I don't know that off the top of my head. I probably should have looked that up. I don't think it's been very recent. Adrian Peterson has 0 rings. That's all. This is one of the best running backs of all time. He's got 0 rings. And Derrick Henry, the king, never made a Super Bowl yet.
Derrick Henry has not looked like himself the past couple of weeks
No,
either.
he has not. No,
Dude's
he
been
has
averaging like
not.
2.2 yards per carry. This
Shout
is
out
not
DJ Reader. DJ Reader completely shut down the. I watched a good portion of that game. So athletic on the interior. He takes up two blocks and he just pushes both guys every single time back into the backfield. And like it feels like Derrick Henry's not washed. He's been going up against a couple of those guys, but there are easy ways to stop a running back. And it is what it is. Like you can stop Derrick Henry with DJ Reader, and it neutralizes him.
big man on big man. That's what
Big
you got
man
to
on
do.
big man, exactly. And that's why the running back position is a little bit different than like the quarterback position. It's not as
Exactly.
valuable. So
I mean, you're talking about the Bengals real quick. Shout out to that offense yesterday. They
yeah,
won. They went out there and they won without Jamar Chase or Joe Mixon yesterday. I mean, it's pretty damn impressive, especially for a team who started off the year not that well. I think it was it 0-3 or was it 0-2?
it
I
was 0
forget what
2.
you 0-2. I mean, that's not what you wanted from a team who just made the Super Bowl. But hey, they've come back. They have a winning record right now, and they're right in the wild card race. So I just wanted to give my little shout out to that Cincinnati offense yesterday.
What about Joe Burrow? Because like, where does Joe Burrow rank as far as quarterbacks? He does not have the top tier arm strength. He does not have like the pocket presence of a Patrick Mahomes. He does not have the mobility, but he's got a 101.7 rating this season. He's got 23 touchdowns to 8 interceptions, 69% completion percentage. He's gonna hit about 4,500 yards with he'll probably end up about 35 touchdowns to 12 picks maybe. That's a crazy year for a guy with pretty much missing his number one wide receiver and a very banged up team for the majority of the year. I think Joe Burrow kind of get a little bit more hate recently than he deserves. He's really a great quarterback, I think.
I mean, I do agree with you, but one comparison that I just kind of liked coming out of the draft, I wouldn't say it's, step by step similar, but Tony Romo with
Yep.
Joe Burrow. I think it's just very obvious. I mean, like it was always kind of hard to rank Tony Romo, but with Tony Romo, he kind of got that hate from every other fan base just because he was a Dallas Cowboy. And he never really got like, the respect that other guys got. Or and I'm not saying Tony Romo was MVP candidate, blah blah blah, but I feel like it's kind of the same thing with Joe Burrow. He's not elite at really like, you know, anything. Like if we're being honest. And
Yeah.
like it just he's really good at certain things. He knows the game really well. And I mean, like I hate to use this in a sports argument, but he just has that swagger that you want
He's
from a quarterback.
it's confidence. It literally at the end of the day, all it is confidence. Like compare Zach Wilson and Joe Burrow right now. Zach Wilson's got a much stronger arm. He has as far as most evaluators would say, Zach Wilson's got a better pocket presence. He's able to escape the pocket much better than Joe Burrow is. And yet there's Zach Wilson is benched, Joe Burrow is starting. What happened there? At the end of the day, in my opinion, it comes down to confidence. Zach Wilson he's got a documented case of the yips, meaning he just he's not confident in himself. He's like scared out there. You're never going to see that from Joe Burrow. It's like irrational. And when you look at it, it's kind of like that. It's kind of like annoying to see sometimes, especially when they're losing, but it's never changes. And what that does, it keeps you in the league for a long time. And
Yeah,
you just can't hate on it.
That's what you want from your quarterback. I mean, if you're talking about getting the yips, I think if there is one team that Joe Burrow does get him against, it's the Pittsburgh Steelers. I mean, he has 6 of his 8 interceptions against them this year, which is just pretty damn funny. I mean, in 2 games, 6 interceptions. You take
They're a
out
good
those two
defense.
games, 6 interceptions though. That's pretty bad in 2 games. But
It's bad.
that's just not what you want. But I think that you take out those 2 games, I think it's a completely different. Maybe it's a different MVP race this year with Joe Burrow. Probably not. I would still say Patrick Mahomes is leading it, but you know what I mean. There, you take away 6 interceptions. Say that about a lot of guys, but I just find
Yeah.
that a little funny. Um, but yeah, I think Joe Burrow will always be in that hard to judge range his whole career.
Yeah. I 100% agree with that because
Unless
I
he starts winning like sorry, but unless he starts winning like a guy like Tom Brady. That's really
exactly
like I it's that's really it.
because he
Because
just doesn't
they
have the physical tools that puts him on that Mahomes level where he's making those crazy all-time plays week to week. You're not going to see Joe Burrow on the highlights as much as you're seeing Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen. But when you look at the box score at the end of the day, and when you look at the stat sheet, and you go on Pro Football Reference when his career is done, you're going to look at those numbers. And you're going to say, "God damn, Joe Burrow was really nice like that." You say the same thing about Tony Romo. You go look at Tony Romo's 2014, I think it was. Let me pull it up real quick. Yeah, his 2014, 70% completion percentage, 34 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, 113 passer rating. This is literally fairly similar to the season that Joe Burrow is putting up right now. And who would have known Tony Romo would have put up one of those all-time great seasons? Like you watch it and you experience it, but it just kind of goes underlooked because he's not on those highlight plays all the time.
I mean, yeah, I mean, just to go back to it real quick. I mean, the 2014 Dallas Cowboys team probably should have won the Super Bowl, at least got
Yes.
there. I mean, we all kind of know that by now, but
Yes.
yeah, that just shows how good Tony Romo kind of not kind of was at one point in his career. And as I said with this comparison, when you look at Tony Romo or you think of Tony Romo, did you ever think of him as a top 10 quarterback or a top, definitely not top five, really, but in that range? No. But then you look at the stats, you look at the highlights, you look at his plays, and it's going to be the same thing with Joe Burrow. You're going to look back at the end of the day and you're going to go, damn. But there's the other part of that argument where there's going to be some people in probably, I'll say 30 years. We're going to look up Jimmy G's stats and you're going to go, why isn't this guy wearing the gold jacket? Look at his win
I
record. Look at his
I
win loss
saw
record.
that. I think that's kind of crazy. Fuck that. Like, yeah, look at the win loss record, but when you actually pull up Jimmy G's like Pro Football Reference, you see that he started 2 games one year and 5 games another year and 3 games. Why is he not starting that much? Why didn't he actually get a starting quarterback job until he was 28 years old? And then when he was 28 years old, he had his best season where he had 27 touchdowns, 13 picks. You know, he's all right. The win-loss record's cool, 39-17. I think anybody in their right mind is going to be able to look at that San Francisco team and say, oh, damn, that was a really good team. Jimmy G actually kind of held them back because everybody watching it right now is very obviously sees that. Like it's very, except for Niner fans who love to say that Jimmy G is like John Elway, but whatever. Everybody who is watching them can fairly understand. And it's the same thing with Shanahan. It's the reason they went out and got a quarterback. They know Jimmy G is not him. So cool guy, gonna have a very good win-loss record, but I think that there's a bit of a difference between him and the Romo Burrow thing there. I think there's a,
I
a, a
think
big gap there.
I think Jimmy G's gonna get paid this offseason. I think the Jets are gonna be in there. I mean, he
Yeah.
has 16 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, and yeah, I think Jimmy G's a system quarterback, but he's proving, especially this year, that he can win in the system. I mean, I know you look at stats, you have to look at everything, but they're winning games. I mean, I know they won 10-0 yesterday, or 10 or 13-0, whatever it
13.
was, but he has his games. He doesn't make that many stupid reads. He doesn't make stupid plays. I mean, that's what you want from a quarterback right now. I mean, I think right now, obviously, you never want to watch Trey Lance get injured or get hurt, but with this team, I'd want Jimmy G as my quarterback over Trey Lance. They're trying to win right
Oh,
now.
oh my
You
God.
don't want a
Come
rookie
on.
quarterback.
Oh, come on. Well, yeah, sure. Maybe in like when you're playing the Saints in week 12, you're going to want Jimmy G because he's not going to lose you that game. But Jimmy G's not going to win you a playoff game. This is a team with one of the most loaded rosters. They've got the best defense we've seen in the NFL in the past like 10 years, and they're going to lose in the playoffs. Everybody knows it. They are not winning a Super Bowl with Jimmy G. You can literally ask anybody, even Niners fans, they'll tell you they're not winning the Super Bowl this year because Jimmy G is the quarterback. He cannot go out there and win you a playoff game. We've seen it 5 times or 3 times in Jimmy G's career where he's just gone out there and not been able to do it. There's a reason they went and drafted Trey Lance. I don't care if he would lose you 1 or 2 week 12, week 15 games that don't really matter. When it comes down to it, and when you actually need your quarterback is in week 19, week 20, week 21, in the playoffs, when it actually matters. And in those games, it's going to be Jimmy G versus Patrick Mahomes. Not technically because he's in the NFC, but Jimmy G versus Tom Brady, Jimmy G versus Jalen Hurts, all these guys. And every single time out there, they're going to be at a detriment. They're going to be at a disadvantage at the quarterback position. That is not something that I trust long term, and not something that I trust this year for them to go win. I don't think anybody does. I think it's absolutely egregious to say that Trey Lance or Jimmy G's better than Trey Lance for this team.
Right this year, 100%. You don't want a rookie running this team right now, especially
I
with those
disagree.
weapons, great offensive line. That's what you want right now. 16 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. I
4.
say that's pretty good right now.
Double
Or
it. That's
4.
4. But look,
16
man.
touchdowns, 4 interceptions. I mean, I
Yeah.
think that's a pretty damn good stat line. And
Yeah,
he
but
looks
this
pretty
team,
decent.
okay.
All he has to
Let's
be is a
pump the
game
brakes on that.
manager.
Last game, let's look at last game in particular. They won 13-0. They won that game. That goes as a W on Jimmy G's Pro Football Reference. He's 6-3 this season. They won that game. And yeah, if you look at the box score, in every single facet, the Saints offense, technically, which was a terrible offense, did not perform well. They still performed better than the Niners offense. Why? They averaged more yards per attempt through the air. They had more passing yards. They got down the field more, and they were the same on third down. They were 4 for 11 on third down. The Niners were 5 for 13 or 5 for 14. One of the two. It's about the same percentage. It's because they don't have a good quarterback. The reason they won that game was because of their defense. The Niners, and the reason that Jimmy G has this whole great career win-loss record is because of the defense. It's always been because of the defense and the running game. But no, like some fans, it's lost. Like that whole context of that is lost in it. I think it's completely crazy. Like, Trey Lance is a much better quarterback in every facet, and you can care about week 12 when you're in week 12, but fast forward 5 weeks, this game means nothing. You can actually take this game with the real context that it was not a win or a loss, but Jimmy G did not play well. The offense did not play well. They just played a bad team. So I'm not going to take a positive away from that game just because they got a W in the win column. I think that's kind of stupid. I think that when you evaluate quarterback, especially, you have to look at the player that they are instead of the result that they get on the field. Because the result at quarterback, more than any other position, is driven by so many external factors that you can't really just chalk that up to it being the quarterback. And like we see it with Jimmy, we see it with Tua, we see it a bit with Hurts, we see it sometimes with Kirk Cousins. Guys that are in good positions are going to look good, especially in the regular season.
Well, I mean, hey, I have to disagree with you right now with this team going to the playoffs. I'm 1,000% taking Jimmy G over a rookie quarterback or a sophomore. I don't really care what you are, but that's my personal opinion. And hey, last year they were a dropped interception away from the Super Bowl. So you can
Because they
say
would
what
have
you
lost
are.
because they would have had Jimmy G in the
They're
Super Bowl.
they're a running team. They're a defensive team. That's what you are. All you need for that is a game manager to win. All you need. I mean, yes, I understand they made the Super Bowl a couple years ago against the Chiefs, missed that deep pass, but that's not what they're really built on. That's why you bring in a guy like Christian McCaffrey. You have these
Trey
running
Lance hits
backs
that
to
ball.
make his game easier, to make his life a lot easier. And if you really think you can win a Super Bowl with a rookie quarterback this year, I don't know. I
If
would
you think you
definitely
can win
rather
a
have
Super
Jimmy
Bowl
G.
with Jimmy G, I don't know, because we've seen this same story time and time again where they just keep going out there with Jimmy G and expecting it to be any different. Like Jimmy G is going to lead them because you can do all this that you want with the rest of your team. You can add Christian McCaffrey, you can add Brandon Ayuk, you can add a whole offensive line, or you can revamp your offensive line, bring in all these great defenders. But when you need to make that deep throw to Emmanuel Sanders streaking up the middle of the field and to win the Super Bowl, and you have Jimmy G in the pocket trying to make that throw, 9 times out of 10, he's missing it. And we've seen it time and time again with Jimmy G's career. I am never going to sit here and say just because of his win-loss record and some crazy touchdown to interception ratio that's so bolstered by Kyle Shanahan and Bill Belichick being his head coaches, that he's an actual good quarterback that can lead a team to the Super Bowl. That like those two things to me are so separate. I'm not a Jimmy G fan. I think that sticking with him this long and continuing to go down this path is a detriment to your team. And I think they had it right in the beginning when they went out and drafted Trey Lance. It's just, it sucks that he got injured. I think they know in the building that Jimmy G is not the guy for this team.
And I disagree with that, but I
Then
don't think he's
why did they trade so much to draft Lance then?
not.
If they
Why do they
trusted
keep
Jimmy
him
G, then
around though? Why do they keep him around then though?
because well, look at
They
all the
could have
best
cut him.
quarterbacks. Look at all the best quarterbacks. Patrick Mahomes had Alex Smith in front of him. Josh Allen, he spent some time on. Did Josh? Yeah, Josh Allen spent a few weeks on the bench behind Tyrod Taylor. All the best quarterbacks. Aaron Rodgers spent years on the bench. Tom Brady spent years on the bench. All of them sat behind a guy. And of course, Kyle Shanahan is going to try and mimic that. This is a copycat league, and Kyle Shanahan is a smart guy. He tried to mimic that exact formula, and he almost had it. Almost had it perfectly right until week 3 where he tears his ACL. Like, you can't. That is not something that you can hold against, like, Trey Lance and say that now, yeah, Jimmy G looks fine. I think Trey Lance would have looked like this, if not much better than Jimmy G looks.
All right. Well, I would just say I'd rather have a game manager to lead me to the Super Bowl than a rookie. But that's my personal opinion on that. And I think you've made it very evident that you don't like Jimmy G. But
Yes, very.
moving on a little bit, the Chargers yesterday proved to 6-5, made a pretty risky move against the Cardinals at the end of that game.
Yep.
I think we're looking at this season completely different if they miss on that extra point conversion at the end of the game. They'd have a losing record. I think Staley's job would be up in the air right now, and
I think it still
I
is.
don't. I think it's not after. I don't think after. I don't think right now. I think after the season. I don't think he'll get
Fair.
fired right now.
Fair.
But
Yeah, that's fair.
but yeah, I think they missed that. I think we're looking at a completely different Chargers and outlook on this Chargers team right now. I mean, they're in the wild card hunt right now, 6-5. Still have a little ways to go, but it was a risky move to do that against a team like the Cardinals, especially. I mean, this is a team you should beat. I mean, I know your defense just got to stop out there. I know they wanted on it, but I still wouldn't have done that if I was the head coach.
I would. I think yesterday was a huge W for the analytics crowd. Going for 2 at the end of the game, when the other team doesn't have a chance to score and the game's tied, you have a much higher percentage of converting on that than you do in winning in overtime. Like the 2-point conversion percentage in the NFL is above 50%. It's a fairly high rate. It's a 2-yard play. Like any team has a 2-yard play. So I think yesterday was just a big win for analytics in general. We saw Doug Peterson do the exact same thing against the Ravens, and both times it worked. Both times it won him the game. I've always been a fan of that strategy of going for 2 at the end of the game. I've always felt like leaving it in the hands of the other team is a lot more dangerous than leaving in the hands of your team, especially when you got a guy like Justin Herbert, Trevor Lawrence at quarterback, where you really trust them to go out there and make that play. And you should trust them to go out there and make that play. That's your guy. So I don't have really a problem with the way they handled that. The thing that I have a problem with the Chargers is the fact that they were even in that game, or that the Cardinals were in that game for the whole game. They kind of had a chance to win the game up until the end there. That should not really. This Cardinals team is not like that. They are not built to compete in this kind of a game, and I just don't think the Chargers have the players on defense to hold up against those more talented offenses, because this Chargers offense is very simple. It's not, or I'm sorry, the Cardinals offense is very simple. It's not complex. It's not something that you really have to show a bunch of different looks to. It's not something that you can't see what it is on tape. And yet they still had trouble defending it, even with an injured Kyler Murray and an injured Marquise Brown. This was not a real positive win for the Chargers, in my opinion.
I feel like there's been a lot of wins this year for the Chargers where you wouldn't call it positive. It's because they've
Yeah,
squeaked by a lot of times, I feel like, and that's just been the narrative for the Chargers this entire year. I mean, they make it into the playoffs somehow by the skin of their teeth. I think they're absolutely a first round exit, especially if they play a good offense. And as you said, their defense doesn't really have the juice, can't really hang with anybody. And if you're
they
letting
gave
Kyle, go
they
ahead.
gave up 200 rushing yards to the Cardinals,
Yeah. So, I
120
mean,
yards to James Conner.
and that's not what you want to do in 2022.
Yeah,
122 yards to James Conner. But yeah, so to your point right there, go up against a real offense, a playoff offense especially, and it seems like they'd be playing on the road anyway. Even if they're at home, it's kind of a road game for if you're a
Yeah.
Charger. But I just don't see a way where this season ends positively for the Chargers, and I think they're a first round exit if they make the playoffs. And I think Staley is long gone, and I think the whole what's his name, Sean Payton to the Chargers experiment is going
Yes.
to happen sooner than we all think.
I think that has a real possibility of happening. Like Sean Payton he never actually retired. He kind of looked at the Saints situation, said, "Oh shit. Like this cap thing is not going to go away forever." Like for NFL fans, yes, the cap is very real. Look at the Saints. They're not going to be able to do anything for the next 5 off seasons because they pushed these contracts back and back and back until right now. Like we're at the point where it's catching up to them and we're seeing it in full extent. They don't even have their pick this year, but that's a bit of a different story. Going back to the Chargers, we've seen the same story from the Chargers for like 10 straight years. They've got the most star-studded roster. They were one of the most star-studded rosters. They put a bunch of names on the roster and they pay these guys a bunch, but the holes on the roster in a lot of key places, they don't have depth. Like their offensive line, you lose one guy and you've got some real holes where there's like not even NFL players starting on the offensive line. Same thing with your wide receiver group. If you don't have Keenan Allen and Mike Williams out there every single game, it's the worst wide receiver group in the NFL. On the interior of their defense, they did not get any better defending the run. Jerry Tillery, they cut him. They were trying kind of because he was terrible against the run. They didn't get anybody to fill that spot though. So there's really, I mean, they brought in Sebastian Joseph Day. He's been kind of a bust for them so far. All of their signings kind of been bust. They've got a lot of high tier names, but in key positions, they just don't have even NFL caliber players, that holds you back so much.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing in the NFL, especially, is depth. It's just such an injury-ridden league, and as you said, they have none of that. So I think that is just the biggest thing that will always bite this Chargers team in the ass until they figure it out. And the time's running out on this Justin Herbert rookie deal. I think there's 1 year left, or is this the year they extend him this offseason?
There's another year left.
Yeah, so I mean, you have 1 more year to get it right. I don't really trust the Chargers that much to get it right. I think they'll go out there and they'll spend again, and that's really all it's going to be. I mean, they're going to have to pay Austin Eckler soon, which I definitely think they're going to do. They paid Keenan Allen, they paid Mike Williams, they paid all the surrounding guys, but they the Chargers are a 13-year-old playing Madden, basically. I mean, you go out there, you pay all the cool guys, you trade for Khalil Mack because in Madden you can do that for a fifth round pick, and you can get all these cool players. You can go out there, you can sign J.C. Jackson. But, the dedicated franchise player knows you got to go in there and you got to get the fifth round steals. You got to go out there and you got to sign the underrated players, and that's just not really what the Chargers have been doing. I mean, look at the Chiefs. They let go of Tyreek Hill. You go and you rebuild, and you get all these little pieces that kind of make up for that. Not fully, because we all know Tyreek Hill is probably the best wide receiver in the game, if not top two, top three. But there's teams that know how to rebound and really rebuild and make a team one. And then there's the Chargers, which just don't know how to do that. And it's very, very evident.
They never have. I mean, I said it from probably it's been about 2 years, but Justin Herbert is like his career is identical to Philip Rivers. Very talented, great quarterback. And if you were to put him on a franchise, like if you were to switch out Philip Rivers and Tom Brady early in their career, I think that Philip Rivers puts together a very similar career to what Tom Brady puts together. But you're on the Chargers. And a lot of this, your legacy as a quarterback revolves around your supporting cast. I mean, this goes back to the Jimmy Garoppolo thing. Yeah, Jimmy Garoppolo's career numbers look great because look at his supporting cast and look at the coaching staff around him that's helping him and really supporting him. Then look at the difference between that and what Justin Herbert's dealing and with and what Philip Rivers was dealing with. I think Brandon Staley is one of the worst coaches in the league. I think Joe Brady may be the worst offensive coordinator outside of Matt Canada. So like they just have so many people and players and coaches that I think are unserious. It's a very unserious franchise. And then you couple that with being in LA where you don't have any actual fans and being kind of a joke of a franchise. I don't see it turning around.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, they should have just never made that move from San Diego. No one cares about the Chargers. No one
100%.
will ever care about the Chargers. And that's they dug this hole and they're gonna have to get out of it eventually. I mean, you have Justin Herbert, try to build from that, but from what the Chargers have been trying to build, it hasn't worked that well so far. So we'll see what happens. But as I said, they have to learn how to really get those small pieces that will make the big pieces churn all together. An NFL team is
Absolutely.
a well-oiled machine, and that's how you win football games. I mean, even going back to the Jimmy Garoppolo thing, to your defense with this, they have him. They're going to build everything around him to make it better. And you know what? That's what a well-oiled machine does. You have a guy like Patrick Mahomes, where you have the big contract as your quarterback, and you're paying this guy $50 million. So you know what? We're going to shed our top wide receiver who wants top money, which he obviously deserves. But we got to get better at other positions. We got to make sure our defense is there. We got to make sure everything else is there, and that's what they do. So I applaud teams who know how to do that, and it really shows what who's who basically
Oh
in the
yeah,
league.
absolutely. You can very easily differentiate the good franchises from bad franchises.
And it's hard to change your narrative as a team, as a franchise, I guess you can say. I mean, in every single sport, you'll look at the Kings in basketball, you'll look at the Chargers in football, or the Browns. I wouldn't even put the Chargers on the Browns level, but I'll say the Browns in football, and then baseball, you have like a different one every 15 years. But you know what I mean. There's always
Mhm.
those franchises who just don't know how to get it done, and that will be the Chargers with Justin Herbert.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair analogy there.
Yeah.
Or kind of
So wanted to wrap it up today with one more guy I wanted to talk about. Trevor Lawrence. We talked about him a
yeah.
little bit before, but I wanted to dive right into him. Had his breakout game. I've been saying all year, I need to see the game from Trevor Lawrence. He's been good all year, putting up good underrated numbers kind of under the table. People have kind of been writing him off a little bit. But this was the game I needed to see. I mean, especially against the Ravens, against, the top team in the AFC North. Uh, what did he do? He had I just lost it. 29 for 37, 321 yards, three touchdowns. He was hitting guys in stride. He was making plays when it mattered. This was the guy they drafted number one overall, and this was the guy who was getting the Andrew Luck comparisons right out of the draft. I mean, Doug Peterson called a pretty damn good game, and I just love I love what they're doing out down there in Jacksonville. But again, Jacksonville is just one of those teams who, unless they are the Saxonville Jaguars, where they're making the AFC Championship and they're a great team, nobody's going to care about them until they do it.
I do like the direction that the Jaguars are going. That fourth quarter by Justin Herbert was surgical. Just that's the only way to put it. Just surgical.
Trevor
Every single
Lawrence.
yes, sorry, by Trevor Lawrence was it that he was just incredible. Hitting guys like you said on in stride on the sideline through like he was hitting hole shots. Which is something he's been missing a lot this season. There's hole shots down the sideline over the defender's head in front of the safety, but he was hitting those. And I saw maybe three separate ones, which were probably some of the best throws I've seen this year. And like everything about, I've always been a Trevor Lawrence fan. At least these past 2 years, I thought he wasn't the Andrew Luck that people were trying to say that he was, but that was mostly just because he was going to Jacksonville. And now that we're seeing him with a competent coaching staff and really some competent pieces around him, I think that we're about to see the explosion of Trevor Lawrence, like a renaissance of who this guy really can be. Because up until this point, we've seen flashes and we've seen disappointment, but I think that this is about the turning point for him.
I mean, yeah, over his last two games after his disappointing game against the Broncos, where he had a couple dumb plays, and as I said, this was a guy you wanted up there on the podium after the game saying he made some mistakes. I want to go out there and do better. But ever since he had that interview, six touchdowns, zero interceptions, higher passer rating every single week as we've gone up. And that's just what you want to see, as you said. And, I'm all here for the 2023, 2024 Trevor Lawrence MVP debate. I'm here for that. That'll be my
Yeah.
that'll be my like that'd be like my $10 fun bet for the year.
Yeah, I
I'd
think
put that
that
on him in the
that's
beginning of the
fair.
year. I wouldn't
If
actually like bet a lot on that, but I'm here for that. I'm here for that.
it would take like the Titans falling off for a season, which they haven't done under Mike Vrabel. Mike Vrabel is one of the best coaches in the league, just doesn't get credit for it. But if there's like a year where they just kind of slow down, Derrick Henry's hurt, and they're just not kind of the same team, and the Jags can surprise and win the division, and Trevor Lawrence has one of those great years, I don't think it's impossible. They're going to have to add some weapons. Zay Jones can't be wide receiver two, and I like Zay Jones. He had a very good game the
Yeah,
other day, but you need another speedster in that lineup at wide receiver. And look, it's in an off season where wide receivers come available all the time. I don't think it's impossible for them to add somebody. So it's a little bit crazy to say right now, Trevor Lawrence MVP next year, but hey, man, I don't think it's totally impossible. There
I
is a
think he'll
world.
finish top 10. I think he'll definitely finish top 10 though. I know that's even a little.
Sit on your take. Go for
I'll
MVP.
sit on I'll sit on my take, but I think that's my lock. That's my lock though. That's my
Okay.
$10 bet MVP, but my lock is top 10.
Okay.
But yeah, as you said, I really do see a world where this is. I mean, Derrick Henry's going to be 29 going into next year. I mean, and sometimes you just see those things. I mean, right now with Derrick Henry, how many more years can he just go out there for 17, 18, 19 games, whatever it is, and just carry this Titans team? I mean, because when he isn't at his best, that brings the whole Titans offense down. And do you trust Ryan Tannehill? Do we trust the whole Malik Willis thing? And I absolutely do agree with you. Mike Vrabel is an underrated head coach in this league. But I love their defense. I hate their offense, basically, with the Titans.
Yeah, I mean, 30 years old is about the time the best running backs start to fall off. I mean, the guy that I compare Derrick Henry to the most is Eric Dickerson, and it's still loading here. Yeah, what do you know? In his age 28 season, Eric Dickerson he led the league in yards, had 14 touchdown yards per game, led the league in pretty much everything. Same thing, year 29, which is where Derrick Henry is right now, started to go down. His touchdowns got cut in half, and he went from 103 yards per game to 87. Then in age 30, he never had over 700 yards again for the rest of his career. And that's kind of like all-time great player, Hall of Famer Eric Dickerson. But they fall. It's a
It's a
running
running
back.
back.
If you give
Running
them
back.
the ball, this is a guy that led the league in carries 3 separate times in his first few years. If you give them the ball that often, they're eventually going to just fall off. You
Unless your
can't
name's
do anything
Adrian
about it.
Peterson.
Well, even Adrian Peterson, he had a couple of years where he literally just wasn't playing because he was hurt. And I mean, I think that genuinely did kind of extend his career a little bit because he got those years where he got the rest where he wasn't getting that full workload.
It's just it's just beyond me that at 34 years old, this guy put up 1,000 yard season in Washington. Like that would
Yep.
just always amaze me from Adrian Peterson's perspective. But yeah, I mean, if there's a perfect storm for Jacksonville brewing, especially with this terrible division, I mean, we have the Colts who knows going to be their quarterback next year. Then we have the Titans, as we just talked about, and who am I missing from their division right now? I just blew Texans,
Yes.
and then there's the Texans. So, is there a better time for Trevor Lawrence to take that step than next year?
I
And I
don't
don't
think
think
so.
there is.
You just
So you
got to
know
add
what?
one wide receiver to that mix.
It sucks that the wide receiver uh free agency class is terrible. But as you said, there's always someone up for trade as a wide
Yep.
receiver. We'll see what happens. And T-Law for 2023, 2024 MVP. Heard that here
Always the
now.
draft as well. Always the draft for wide receiver. I think that
That
there's a
is
couple
true.
guys this year that they could go out and target.
Is Marvin
Now
Harrison's
Harrison's a
next year?
sophomore, which that's something that
Ridiculous.
if you want to
I
end
think
on the Marvin Harrison conversation, he could put up 1,000 yards in the NFL right now. Absolutely.
yeah,
And wide receiver is the one position where I feel like you could be like a
sophomore.
freshman or a sophomore and just come right into the NBA. You don't need those 3 years. And like Jamar Chase sat out his junior year because it was mostly because of COVID, but so he didn't get hurt mostly. So like so many times you see that from players. Like just let those guys into the league a little bit earlier. Like Marvin Harrison should be
Imagine
starting.
imagine what Marvin Harrison's gonna do next year. Like
Like
it's
he could put up like 3,000 yards, but who cares? Let him play in the NFL. Like he's been ready for the NFL the second he stepped foot on a college campus, and they're waiting because of the stupid rule. I hate it.
and, and you know what? Like that would have been perfect. Like that would have been like my duo moving forward, the Marvin Harrison and Trevor Lawrence. But you know what? Trevor Lawrence is gonna win MVP. The Jaguars aren't going to have the pick high enough to pick Marvin Harrison Jr. So that's how it's going to work out now. So thanks a lot, NCAA, for ruining the best connection in NFL history right there. But anyway, I'm kidding. But You have anything else for today? Ended on Marvin
Uh,
Harrison and Trevor Lawrence MVP?
yeah, I'm all good on
Okay.
that one.
All right. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us today. Make sure to follow us on Instagram and Twitter at CCSN Sports. We'll be posting a lot more NFL, NBA, and MLB news daily all the time. Guys, thank you so much again for tuning in and see you next week.